My name's Alex. I'm 42 years old, a senior engineer at a mid-sized firm in San Diego. For the last 12 years, I've been married to Julia, a college professor, well-read and well-spoken, the type of woman who fills up a room even when she's silent. People always said we were that rare couple who made each other better. And honestly, for a long time, I believed them. The funny thing is, when your life looks solid on the outside, no one ever thinks to ask what's really going on behind the front door. This past year had been strange, but I'd been too distracted with work to think much of it. Project deadlines, management changes, and late nights at the office had blurred everything. And Julia, she always seemed busy too. Lectures, student conferences, department dinners. We'd both settled into the rhythm of two professionals who touched base out of habit, not hunger. Still, I tried to make the most of our anniversary. I took the day off, cleaned the apartment from top to bottom, drove across town to get her favorite lemon raspberry cake from that tiny French bakery near her old campus. I even polished the silverware, the real stuff we never used except for holidays or special moments. I wanted the evening to feel like a reset, like maybe we could remember who we were before we became whatever this was. Julia came home around 6. I was lighting the candles on the dinner table when I heard the front door click. I turned and saw her standing there, holding her bag like she wasn't sure she should even be here. She wore a pale blue dress I didn't recognize. It was elegant, not flashy, not casual, the kind of dress you wear when you want to be noticed. Her hair was curled differently than usual. Subtle makeup, nothing over the top. She looked intentional. "Hey," I said, smiling, trying to break through the tension I hadn't even realized was in the air. She smiled back, tight, brief, then walked into the bedroom without a word. I waited, poured the wine, checked the food. 30 minutes passed. When she finally came out again, she was standing straighter as if she'd rehearsed something in the mirror. Her hands were folded in front of her and she didn't sit down. Instead, she just stood there like a teacher about to deliver hard news to a student she cared about. "I've been thinking," she began, and I already felt my stomach tighten. That phrase, "I've been thinking," is never followed by anything simple. "I think we should spend tonight apart. Just one night. It's something I need to try." I blinked. My hand tightened around the stem of the wine glass, but I didn't say anything yet. "Try what?" I asked finally. She hesitated. "Just space. A night to be on my own. No expectations. I've read about this kind of thing, couples doing short, intentional separations to reflect. I think it could be good for us. Good for us." I repeated. She nodded, avoiding my eyes. "I'm not saying anything's wrong. I just think maybe we're stuck in a loop. And trying something new might wake us up a little." I stood there, across the table from her, with the candles flickering between us like we were strangers in a restaurant forced to share the same table. "Why tonight?" I asked quietly. "Of all nights, why our anniversary?" She sighed. "Because it matters. If we're going to do this right, it has to mean something. Otherwise, it's just another random Tuesday." That's when I realized this wasn't about space or reflection. This wasn't an idea that had come to her today. It had been brewing. Planned. And tonight was chosen not in spite of our anniversary, but because of it. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. But something in me froze over. I looked at her, really looked at the polished hair, the new dress, the carefully neutral expression. I'd seen that face before. Not on her, on other people. Clients trying to break a contract without admitting fault. Engineers presenting data that deliberately avoided the obvious conclusion. "You're sure it's worth it?" I asked her. My voice was flat. Not angry. Just detached. Julia opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't answer. I nodded. That was enough. Without another word, I turned around, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the box with her gift. A first edition of Beloved, the Toni Morrison novel she'd written her dissertation on. I'd spent 3 months tracking it down, negotiating with collectors, even paying extra to have it restored and rebound. Now, holding it in my hands, it felt like some ancient relic from a marriage that no longer existed. I set the gift down gently on the hallway table. Then I grabbed my coat and walked out the front door. No shouting. No door slamming. No dramatic goodbye. Just silence, the kind that says more than any speech ever could. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. Not in a home where love had been replaced by experiments and anniversaries were a chance to test solitude. The streets were quiet. San Diego has this way of softening at night. The ocean air blurs the streetlights and the city hums like it's whispering to itself. I walked for blocks, past cafes full of laughter, past people holding hands, past windows glowing with television blues and bedtime lamp golds. And all I could think about was how easily someone can leave you without ever walking away. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't cry. I sat on a bench near the harbor until the sky shifted from black to that uncertain gray before dawn. One night apart, she'd said. But something told me that night was only the beginning. I walked back home the next morning with the slow, reluctant steps of someone headed toward a crime scene because that's what it felt like. Like something sacred had been violated. And while there was no broken glass, no signs of a struggle, the silence inside that house was loud with betrayal. I hadn't texted Julia all night. She hadn't texted me either. No, where are you, or are you okay? Just radio silence, as if we were strangers who happened to share a mortgage. But as I stepped into the living room, everything looked painfully normal, keys in the bowl, shoes lined up neatly by the door, the scent of the lemon raspberry cake still lingering faintly in the air like a cruel joke. Julia wasn't home. The candles from the night before had burned out. Her plate was untouched. She had left too then. Maybe even before I did. I showered, changed into fresh clothes, and sat on the couch, staring at the wall. My mind drifted, but not randomly. It followed a thread. A long, subtle, ugly thread I had been pretending not to see for months. Looking back, it wasn't one big moment that made everything collapse. It was a slow leak, and I'd been patching it with excuses. It started about a year ago when Julia began taking weekend conferences in Los Angeles. At first, I encouraged it. She was ambitious, passionate about her research, and I respected that. But then came the third trip in 2 months, and every one of them last minute, booked without discussion. I'd offered to tag along once, make a weekend of it, explore the city while she worked. She smiled politely and said, "It's really just boring academic stuff, you'd be miserable." I let it go. But the distance grew. Then there were the dresses. Not many, but enough to notice, elegant, expensive pieces she never wore around me. I once found a silk blouse still in its boutique packaging, tucked in the back of her closet with the tag still on. When I asked about it, she said she bought it on sale for an upcoming faculty event. But I never saw her wear it. Not once. Her phone became another red flag. Julia had never been secretive. She used to leave her phone face up on the table. She'd hand it to me without hesitation to look something up or change a playlist. That changed gradually. Notifications started disappearing. She switched to using her laptop more for messaging. One night, as we lay in bed, I noticed her typing furiously under the covers. When I asked who it was, she muttered, "Just a colleague." I didn't ask which one. I didn't want to know. But now I realize I should have. There was one night I can't stop thinking about. We were on a short trip to Santa Barbara. I'd planned it as a surprise, trying to inject some life back into whatever was fading between us. She was grateful at first, or pretended to be. But on the second day, she disappeared for nearly 4 hours. She claimed she had an urgent call with a student advisor back home. "It's a long story," she said, waving it off like a mosquito. But when I offered to bring her lunch wherever she was, she insisted, "No need. I'll grab something while I'm out." She came back flushed, hair windblown, phone dead. I remember noticing her makeup had been reapplied, lightly but clearly. I asked how the call went, and she blinked, paused, and said, "Oh yeah. It was exhausting." Then she changed the subject. I buried the doubt. But now, sitting in the quiet aftermath of what should have been our anniversary, those moments came rushing back like pieces of a broken mirror, sharp, disjointed, but forming one unmistakable image. Julia had been drifting away long before she asked for that one night apart. I didn't want to believe she was having an affair. Honestly, even now, I wasn't sure if it was physical. But emotionally? She was elsewhere. With someone else. Some part of her had already shut the door on us. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I went into her office. It was our shared space, technically. We had a study at the back of the apartment. Her books lined the left wall, mine the right. A big window looked out over the neighborhood, and we each had our desks, our rituals. But over time, I stopped going in there. It became her space, her sanctuary. The first thing I noticed was the folder on her desk. Open, as if left in a hurry. Inside were printouts of emails, correspondence with someone named Jason T. I'd seen the name before. He was a fellow professor at her college, maybe 5 years younger. They'd done a few panels together. The emails weren't romantic. Not overtly. But there was something in the tone, the way she described me, or rather, didn't. In one, she wrote, "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into someone else's version of life. Do you ever feel like you're acting in someone else's story?" Another one read, "Thank you for last weekend. Felt real. Like I could breathe again. Last weekend." That was when she said she was in LA for a conference. I remember because I sent her a picture of the sunset from our balcony. And she replied 3 hours later, just a thumbs up. I closed the folder and sat down in her chair, feeling like I'd broken some sacred code. But what was sacred anymore? Our wedding vows? Our anniversary? Everything felt like a lie wrapped in habit. That night, I didn't confront her. She still wasn't home. I didn't call or text. I wasn't ready for answers. I wasn't sure I could handle them. I needed time to collect the broken pieces of myself and decide whether I even wanted to glue them back together. Instead, I poured a drink, turned off my phone, and sat on the balcony until the sky turned black again. This time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was full of questions that had answers I was too afraid to hear. But deep down, I already knew. You don't ask for one night apart unless you've already had 1,000 moments with someone else. I didn't go back to the apartment that night. Something in me couldn't. I checked into a small hotel not far from downtown. One of those quiet, tucked-away places with outdated carpets and polite silence in the hallways. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be found, or when they've just found out too much. I didn't sleep. Not really. I laid there on the bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling and listening to every creak of the building. My phone buzzed twice. Once from my boss asking if I was okay, and once from Julia. She didn't leave a message, just sent a single text. "Are you safe?" I didn't respond. I didn't feel like rewarding her with an answer to a question she hadn't earned the right to ask. By morning, I realized I'd forgotten something. Cash. Most of what I had on me was in my wallet, which was still in the drawer by the front door back home. I'd left the house so fast that night that I didn't take anything except my phone and keys. I figured Julia would be at work by then. It was early, barely past 7 a.m., and she had a class every Thursday at 8. So I figured I'd sneak in, grab what I needed, and leave before the echo of her voice had a chance to fill the rooms again. But I was wrong. The door wasn't locked. At first, that didn't surprise me. Julia often forgot to lock it in the mornings. But then I stepped inside, and the sounds told me everything I needed to know. Voices. 2 of them. Low. Familiar. I moved slowly, instinctively quiet, as if silence could somehow protect me from what I was about to see. The hallway seemed longer than usual. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might echo through the drywall. I stopped just before the living room and listened. It was her laugh that made me freeze. That laugh. Not the one she gave students or colleagues. Not the professional chuckle I'd heard in lecture halls or over Zoom calls. No, this was different. Int asterisk mate. Relaxed. The kind of laugh you let out when your guard is down, when you think the world outside doesn't exist. And then his voice. Soft, warm, and unmistakable. Jason. I didn't need to see them to know. But I looked anyway. They were on the couch. She wore that same pale blue dress from our anniversary night. Her feet were tucked under her, like she belonged there, like she'd done this before. Jason was beside her, not touching her exactly, but close. His arm draped along the back of the couch, fingers casually brushing her shoulder every so often. They were drinking coffee, laughing, talking like a couple who had shared 100 quiet mornings together. The sight knocked the wind out of me, but I didn't move. She hadn't noticed me. Neither had he. I stood in that hallway, the same hallway where she once greeted me after work with a kiss, where we used to leave notes on the mirror for each other, where I once dropped to one knee and asked her to build a life with me. And now, this. I didn't shout. I didn't confront them. I didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I was crushed. Instead, I turned around, walked back down that hallway, stepped out into the sunlight, and let the door close softly behind me. It wasn't until I hit the sidewalk that I realized I was shaking. I walked for what felt like hours, the city blurring past me in pieces. Dogs barking in backyards, joggers with earbuds, the smell of brewing coffee from open cafes. Life continued, indifferent to the fact that mine had just crumbled. That image, Julia in that dress, smiling at Jason like he was her home, it wouldn't leave my head. I ended up at the marina, sitting on the same bench where I'd spent the night after our anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. 1 week ago, I'd been trying to convince myself this was just a rough patch. Now I was staring down the undeniable truth. She wasn't confused. She wasn't trying something new. She had already made a choice. I had just been too blind or too trusting to see it. By noon, I checked out of the hotel and went back to the apartment one last time. This time it was empty. I packed a bag, just the essentials. Clothes, laptop, chargers, a few books. The kind of things you take when you know you're not coming back, but you're not ready to say it out loud yet. Her gift, the first edition of Beloved, was still sitting on the hallway table, unopened, untouched. I took it with me, but not for sentimental reasons. I took it because it was mine, because I had poured time, money, and meaning into something that clearly meant nothing to her. And I refused to let it rot in the ruins she left behind. Before I left, I stood in our bedroom for a long time, staring at the bed where we used to dream together. Now it was just a reminder of how far we'd fallen, of what I'd ignored, of what she'd chosen. I left the keys on the kitchen counter. And just like that, I was no longer a husband. I was something else, something in between who I had been and who I'd have to become. Later that day, I got a message from her. A full paragraph this time. "Alex, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to find out that way. Please, can we talk?" I didn't reply. What was left to say? I'd seen enough, heard enough, felt more than enough. And in the silence that followed, I finally began to understand what people meant when they said betrayal isn't just about S*X or secrets. It's about the quiet choices, the ones made in the dark, the ones where someone decides without ever saying a word that your heart is disposable. A week passed. Not a word from me. Dozens from her. The first couple days, Julia tried to keep it measured, like she thought we were just having a disagreement, something that could be smoothed over with enough carefully chosen sentences. Her messages were calm, rational, sprinkled with concern. "Can we please talk? I think we both need clarity. You don't have to forgive me, but at least let me explain." By the third day, her tone cracked. The sentences got longer, more desperate, messy. She showed up at my office unannounced. Security called up to ask if I was okay taking a visitor. I told them no. I didn't even walk to the window. I kept my head down at work, tried to fake focus, but my mind kept dragging me back into that apartment, back to the hallway, back to the blue dress and the coffee cups. It was all too clear now. There hadn't been one moment that changed everything. There had been a series of quiet betrayals, each one a pinprick in the fabric of what we had, until it tore. But by Friday night, something in me shifted. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe I just had enough of being the broken one. Or maybe it was this bitter little thought that crept in and wouldn't let go. She wanted a taste of freedom. Let her choke on it. So I wrote her back. A letter, not a message. Something deliberate. Not emotional. Not angry. Just final. I started with what she always wanted. Honesty. "Julia, you asked for one night apart. What you didn't realize was that you already took it, and many more before it. You said you wanted space. You got it. Now I'm giving you a choice. You can have freedom, truly, but it won't be on your terms. It'll be on mine. You said you wanted to try something different. Okay, let's make this simple. Let's both spend one night with someone else. Fully aware. No lies. You pick someone. I'll pick someone. No secrets. No guilt. No pretending. After that, we decide what's left. If anything, you say you want clarity. That's what clarity looks like. Truth under fluorescent lights. Not in the dark. But just know this, if you back out, it won't be a pause. It'll be goodbye. Permanently. You wanted new? Let's find out what new actually feels like. Alex. I sent the letter through the old mailbox by the marina. The same one I used to drop her love notes into years ago. Back when we still did that kind of thing. The response came the next day, not in words, but in her face. She showed up at the door of the temporary place I was renting. Red-eyed, out of breath, mascara smudged. No performance this time. No posture. "Don't do this," she said. "Please, Alex. You're not like this." And maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't like this. But then again, I hadn't been the one to start any of this. I hadn't played dress-up for someone else. I hadn't turned our anniversary into an audition for a new life. I'd been steady. Loyal. Blind, maybe, but solid. And now I was done being steady for someone who'd already stepped off the ship. I'm just giving you what you asked for, I said. A night apart. Except this time, we both know what it really means. She tried to smile like she thought maybe charm would save her. It didn't. I didn't mean it like that, she said. I didn't think you'd go through with it. I nodded. That's exactly the problem. She sat on the edge of my bed and started crying, the way people cry when they realize they're no longer holding the script. I made a mistake, she whispered. Which one? I asked. There were so many. For a long time, she didn't say anything. Just sat there with her face in her hands like she could bury the past inside her palms. But it was already out. Laid bare. There was no going back to polite arguments and empty apologies. After a while, she stood up, wiped her eyes, and said, I can't do what you're asking. And I just looked at her. That's fine, I said. But understand this, you don't get to choose anymore. You made your choices. I'm just responding. She left quietly. No slam, no scream. Just the soft click of the door. And something in that sound felt like the cleanest break we'd had in years. I didn't go out that night. Didn't line up some date or try to force something that wasn't real. It wasn't about revenge or replacing her. It was about reclaiming something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Self-respect. The next morning, I took a walk along the cliffs, watching the ocean crash into itself like it couldn't decide which way to turn. It felt fitting. Because that's what we were, two waves that used to move in rhythm but had started crashing against each other without even realizing it. By Sunday, Julia sent another message. I've been crying all day. I don't want to lose you. Can we please just go back? But there was no back. That's the thing about betrayal. Once it arrives, it doesn't just knock on the door. It changes the locks behind it. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. Done being the man she thought would never walk away. Done being the backup plan. Done being the one holding the weight while she wandered off to see if someone else made her feel more alive. The truth was, I didn't need her permission anymore. She broke something. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one who felt broken. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that people rarely regret the betrayal, they regret the consequences. After I delivered the ultimatum, after I stood firm and didn't crack, Julia's entire tone shifted. The composed academic turned frantic. The woman who once calculated every move down to the second was now spinning in circles, trying to rewind a life she had fast-forwarded without me. She called 3 times that Monday. Then again on Tuesday. Left voicemails that started calm, then cracked. On Wednesday, she came by my building with a box of my things I hadn't even asked for. Inside were my old college hoodie, a watch she'd bought me for our 10th anniversary, a framed photo of us on the cliffs in Big Sur, one of those windy days where you're squinting and smiling at the same time. Her hands were shaking when she handed it to the receptionist. She said she's not leaving until you talk to her, the receptionist told me with a sympathetic glance. I told her to tell Julia I was in a meeting. I wasn't. I was in the break room, drinking coffee, staring at the box like it was a coffin full of ghosts. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. The same things that had been inside our life, good intentions, beautiful images, all of it smothered under layers of what used to be. That night, she texted again. I messed up. You're right about everything. Can we please just have dinner? Just dinner. I need to talk to you in person. I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just didn't believe in anything she could say anymore. Words had lost their weight. She'd already said everything that mattered, not with her mouth, but with her choices. But by Friday, I gave in, not to her, but to curiosity. I agreed to meet. Public place. Early dinner. Neutral ground. We chose a little place near the harbor, one we used to visit when we first moved in together. I remembered the booth before I remembered the menu. She was already there when I arrived, sitting up straight, wearing something modest. Not the polished, too perfect version of herself I'd seen with Jason. No makeup. Just Julia. Or at least the version she wanted to present now. When she saw me, her eyes filled with something between hope and panic. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I nodded and sat down. No handshake. No hug. Just air between us. For the first few minutes, we didn't talk much. She tried to smile, made a comment about how the place hadn't changed at all. I didn't humor her. I wasn't here to share memories. I was here to hear the truth if she was finally ready to offer it. She started slowly. I didn't sleep with him, she said. I didn't respond. I know that probably doesn't change anything. But I need you to know it wasn't about that. It was something else. Still, I said nothing. Just looked at her, letting her sit in the silence she used to fill with lectures and stories and laughter. It started with texts, she admitted. Late ones. At first, it was just about school, about work. But then we started talking about other things. Life. Regrets. You and I had drifted so far apart and I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. That line, I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, hit harder than I expected. Not because I believed it justified anything, but because it wasn't entirely false. Somewhere in the hum of ordinary days, we had stopped reaching for each other. But while I kept showing up, she had quietly checked out. She kept talking. I felt invisible. Not because of anything you did. Just because of who I'd become. I didn't feel like a woman anymore. I felt like a role, a wife, a professor, a scheduler of things. With Jason, I felt noticed again. Not adored. Just seen. She said it like a confession. But to me, it sounded more like a deflection. I leaned forward finally. Julia, I said, voice steady, do you think I didn't feel invisible too? Do you think I didn't wake up some mornings and wonder if you saw me really saw me or if I'd just become part of the furniture? She blinked, caught off guard. I did everything I could to hold this together, I continued. I planned our anniversary. I bought you the book you once told me you could never afford. I listened every time you vented about department drama. I supported your ambitions, never once asked you to slow down for me. But you chose to explore your emptiness with someone else. She didn't interrupt. Just nodded. Slowly. Like the weight of my words was finally crushing the excuses she'd been clinging to. I know, she said. And I hate myself for it. I didn't believe that. Not entirely. She hated the result. Not the act. Not enough to stop it when it counted. Then came the line I'd been dreading. I want to fix this, she whispered. Please. I'll do anything. There it was. The lifeline tossed into the storm she started. But I wasn't drowning anymore. You can't fix what you shattered, I said quietly. You can only rebuild. And rebuilding means starting from nothing, not dragging broken pieces around hoping they'll hold. A tear slid down her cheek. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the real kind. But I couldn't let it move me. You're not the only one who's been grieving, I said. I just didn't use someone else to do it. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back. I forgive you, I said. Not because you asked for it, but because I refuse to let this define me. She looked up at me then, eyes full of hope. But that doesn't mean I want you back. Her face crumpled. The server arrived just then, a painfully awkward interruption. We both waved them off. No food had been ordered anyway. Just water and pain served cold. I stood up slowly and grabbed my coat. Take care of yourself, Julia. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I walked out of that restaurant feeling both empty and full. Empty because this was truly the end. Full because, for the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself. No more waiting. No more wondering. No more reaching for someone who only looked back once they realized what they'd lost. I didn't hear from Julia for several days after the dinner. No texts, no missed calls, no tearful pop-ins at work. Just quiet. And for a moment I almost missed the noise, not because I wanted her back, but because silence leaves you alone with yourself. That's when reflection begins, whether you're ready or not. One evening, about a week later, I came home to find her waiting outside my apartment building. She looked thinner, worn down, the kind of tired that sleep can't fix. I nearly walked past her, but something in her eyes stopped me. I just want 5 minutes, she said. I let her in. Inside, she sat across from me like she was stepping into a confession booth. I never wanted another man, she began. I needed something to remind me I still mattered. She explained that the connection with Jason hadn't been about love or attraction, it was about significance. Feeling seen. Feeling like she could still be someone outside the labels of wife and professor. Being with you, she said, was always safe. And somehow I confused safety with stagnation. It hit me then, her betrayal wasn't just about me. It was about herself. The version of Julia who felt lost, who wanted to rewrite her story without tearing out the pages we'd written together. But in trying to rediscover who she was, she destroyed the one person who never asked her to be anything else. I'm sorry, she said again, eyes full of something heavier than guilt recognition. I forgave her that night. Truly. But not for her sake, for mine. We met one last time in a small cafe downtown, the kind with chipped mugs and mismatched chairs. She was already seated when I arrived, watching the rain run down the window like it was telling its own story. She smiled when she saw me, a faint, sad smile, the kind that knows this isn't a reunion, but a goodbye. We talked like two people who had lived a whole lifetime together and now had nothing left but the epilogue. I still love you, she said. I believe you, I replied. She reached for my hand one last time, and this time I let her. It didn't hurt. It didn't stir hope. It just was. I wish I could take it all back, she whispered, eyes welling. I looked at her, and in the most gentle voice I could manage, I said, what you asked for on our anniversary destroyed everything. She nodded, tears falling now. We left the cafe separately. No hugs, no lingering.